There's someone in your heart right now, and it's not just a memory. It's not just a name you scroll past on your phone. It's not just someone you used to talk to. It's someone who still has space in your thoughts, maybe too much space. That might sound simple, but in matters of the heart, it's everything. When someone occupies space in your mind and heart without definition, you start to lose your footing. You replay moments, analyze every word, search for meaning in the pauses and silences. But all of that searching doesn't bring peace, it breeds anxiety, because confusion leaves you guessing, and guessing is exhausting. There's a difference between mystery and confusion. Mystery invites wonder. Confusion robs you of rest. When you're unsure where you stand with someone, your heart begins to carry weight it was never meant to hold. You try to act normal on the outside, but inside you're constantly measuring, overthinking, wondering if you're being too much or not enough. That's not peace. That's emotional fatigue disguised as hope. Clarity may hurt at first, but it heals. It anchors you. It tells you, this is where I stand. This is what's real. And even if the truth is hard, it gives you something to work with. Because when you know you can move, when you know you can heal, when you know you can pray with precision instead of confusion. But when you don't know, you stay stuck in cycles, half in, half out, half hopeful, half hurting. Sometimes we don't seek clarity because we're afraid of what it might cost. We're scared it might end the fantasy we've built. We're afraid that if we ask the hard questions, we'll lose them completely. So we settle for breadcrumbs. We romanticize their potential. We hold on to moments instead of the whole picture. But the absence of clarity doesn't protect your heart, it postpones the inevitable. Silence speaks. Avoidance is an answer. Mixed signals are still signals. Peace comes from knowing the truth, not avoiding it. And that's what God wants for you, not a relationship built on guessing, but on groundedness. He doesn't lead through chaos. He's not the author of confusion. If you're constantly anxious about someone's intentions or position in your life, that's a sign not of love, but of misalignment. Peace doesn't always mean comfort. Sometimes it means letting go. Sometimes it means asking the hard question and accepting the honest answer. And don't confuse emotional intensity with connection. Just because someone makes your heart race doesn't mean they're right for your future. Confusion can feel like chemistry when you're addicted to unpredictability. But real love, God-centered love, is not chaotic. It clarifies. It commits. It communicates. It brings rest to your spirit, not war to your thoughts. You deserve clarity, not because you're perfect, but because your heart is valuable. And peace is not found in how deeply you feel about someone, but in how clearly you can see the truth about them. That's a difficult lesson to learn, especially when your emotions feel so real, so loud, so overwhelming. When you love someone, or when you deeply desire something to work out, it's easy to let your feelings take the lead. You start to believe that the depth of your emotions must mean something permanent, that if it hurts this much to let go, it must mean it's meant to stay. But emotions can be misleading. They're indicators, not instructions. They show you what's happening inside of you, but they don't always reflect what's real or what's best. You can feel connected to someone who's not healthy for you. You can feel drawn to someone who repeatedly makes you question your worth. You can miss someone who never truly saw you. That doesn't mean your heart is broken beyond repair. It means your heart is human. And being human means sometimes your feelings don't line up with facts. That's why discernment matters. That's why prayer matters. Because sometimes what your heart wants and what your spirit needs are two very different things. Just because you feel peace when they text you doesn't mean they're good for your life. Just because you feel lonely when they're gone doesn't mean you should run back. Emotions fluctuate with circumstances. They respond to memories, to familiar patterns, to old wounds. And often what you feel for someone isn't just about them, it's about the parts of yourself that are still healing. Maybe they filled a void. Maybe they made you feel seen during a time when you were invisible to everyone else. That feeling is valid, but it doesn't mean the person is. You can feel something deeply and still be wrong. You can be convinced that someone is the one simply because your heart has wrapped itself around a fantasy. That doesn't make you naive, it makes you honest. But eventually you have to hold your feelings up to the light of truth. You have to ask, is this person consistent? Do they love me in action, not just in words? Are they building with me, or am I building alone while they benefit? Faith doesn't ignore feelings, it filters them. It invites God into the spaces where emotion clouds clarity. It says, I feel this, but I trust you more. And that trust allows you to let go of what feels right in the moment for what is truly right for your future. Emotional pain is real, but it isn't always a sign that something is meant to stay. Sometimes it's just the price of breaking an unhealthy attachment. So don't make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. Don't let feelings write a future they were never meant to sustain. Feel them, acknowledge them, but don't worship them, because feelings are loud, but truth is steady. And in the end, it's truth that sets you free, not the intensity of what you feel. That truth might sound simple, but it holds weight when your heart is in conflict. When you're in a relationship, a friendship, or even a season of waiting that feels clouded by uncertainty, you have to pause and ask, is this really God, or is this just noise? Because while God can use confusion to draw you closer to Him, He does not author it. He is a God of order, not chaos. He speaks in peace, not panic. Confusion isn't always a lack of information. It's often a lack of alignment. It's what happens when your desires are louder than your discernment. It creeps in when you start justifying behavior that you'd never accept from anyone else. When someone you care about keeps giving you half answers, delayed responses, or inconsistent affection, and yet you keep convincing yourself to stay, that's not clarity. That's confusion, and God doesn't bless that. There's a kind of peace that comes when you're walking in what God has for you, even if it's not easy, even if there are questions. There's still a quiet confidence in your spirit that says, this is right. But confusion will have you second-guessing everything you're worth, your boundaries, even your sanity. That's not love. That's emotional instability. And instability is not from God. Sometimes we stay in confusion because it's easier than confronting the truth. We don't want to face the idea that the person we prayed for, hoped for, maybe even loved, isn't the one God chose. So we stay in this emotional limbo, calling it faith, when really it's fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of being alone. Fear of hearing God say no when we've already decided we want a yes. But a forced yes will never carry God's blessing. God speaks in clarity. He brings conviction, not manipulation. When He's in something, it aligns. It doesn't tear you apart. It doesn't require you to shrink, to guess, to settle. Confusion makes you chase. Clarity makes you rest. And when someone truly values you, when something is truly from God, there won't be hidden agendas or emotional games. There will be communication. There will be peace. There will be fruit. You can't keep asking God to bless what He never built. You can't keep sowing into confusion and expect to reap clarity. If you have to constantly question someone's intentions, that's your answer. If their presence brings more anxiety than security, pay attention. The Holy Spirit doesn't twist your stomach into knots. He brings stillness. Even when He corrects you, it's gentle, not tormenting. So if your heart is in turmoil and you're asking, is this from God? Look at the fruit. Look at the peace. Look at the consistency. If it's from Him, it will not only be good to you, it will be good for you. God does not move in confusion. And where there's chaos, where there's doubt, where there's constant turmoil, He's calling you to step back, listen, and let go of whatever's pulling you away from peace. That truth is difficult to accept because love feels so powerful. When you love someone deeply, it feels like that should be enough to overcome anything. You imagine a future together, you overlook flaws, you cling to the hope that the strength of your feelings will bring you into unity. But love on its own isn't always enough. Alignment is about more than affection. It's about direction, timing, values, purpose, things that love can't fix when they're missing. You can love someone with your whole heart and still be walking in opposite directions. You can want the best for them, pray for them, even support them, but that doesn't automatically mean your lives are meant to be joined. Love can exist in your heart while wisdom tells you to let go. And that's not failure. That's maturity. Sometimes love teaches you more in separation than it ever could in togetherness. It reveals your patterns, your triggers, your growth areas. It exposes the places where you've romanticized a person instead of seeing them clearly. And when you realize you're not aligned, it hurts not because the love was fake, but because it wasn't enough to hold the weight of a shared future. Alignment is about more than chemistry. It's about rhythm. Are you moving at the same pace? Do your visions align? Are you building toward the same kind of life? Do you both serve the same purpose, or are you constantly pulling each other in different directions? These questions matter even if the love is real. There are people you can love who are not equipped to love you back in the way you need. People who are still healing, still running, still choosing things that harm their own soul. And no matter how much you want to walk beside them, they may not be ready or willing to walk in the same direction. That doesn't mean your love was wasted. It just means it had a different assignment. Maybe it was meant to plant seeds to help you grow, to teach you something about who you are and what you truly need. We often confuse intensity with compatibility. Just because something feels strong doesn't mean it's stable. You can have butterflies and still miss the bigger picture. You can share deep conversations and still not share the same future. Love doesn't always mean stay. Sometimes love says, I release you because we're not aligned and I value peace more than attachment. God doesn't ask you to sacrifice alignment for affection. His desire is for you to walk in unity with someone who matches your purpose, who supports your growth, who loves you in truth and in action. So don't hold on to someone just because you love them. Hold on when there's mutual honor, shared values, spiritual agreement, and forward momentum. Love is beautiful, but alignment is what makes it sustainable. It doesn't always feel like it, especially when you're holding on to hope. When you're waiting for someone to make up their mind, to choose you, to change, or to finally show up the way you need them to, you tell yourself you're just being patient. You convince yourself that waiting is faith, that maybe God is working behind the scenes, that maybe timing is the only thing in the way. But sometimes the truth is harder to face. Waiting too long in uncertainty is a silent choice, and that silence speaks volumes. When someone delays choosing you, they're already choosing. When someone constantly says, not yet, maybe, I'm not ready, they're shaping your future through inaction. Because delay doesn't preserve the relationship, it slowly erodes it. While you wait, your heart grows tired. While you hope, your spirit grows restless. And somewhere along the way, you stop thriving and start surviving the uncertainty. We often believe that not making a decision keeps things open. But in reality, it creates a quiet drift. It puts your life on pause even when time keeps moving. And when you keep waiting for someone who won't decide, you're letting them decide for you. You're handing them control of your emotional stability, your forward movement, your healing, and they don't even have to commit. That's not love. That's passivity dressed as potential. You have to recognize that love is expressed through action, not hesitation. People who truly value you don't string you along. They make space. They make it clear. They move with intention. If someone consistently delays clarity, they're showing you what you are to them an option, not a priority. And while that may sting, it's better than pretending their silence still holds promise. God never meant for you to live in limbo. He's not a God of confusion, and He doesn't ask you to settle in situations that leave you emotionally starved. When you pray for direction and all you get is delay, sometimes the answer isn't wait, sometimes it's walk away. Because not all delay is divine. Some of it is disobedience, fear, or immaturity on the other person's part. And you're not required to anchor your heart to someone else's process. You're allowed to say, I need clarity, and if it's not given, you're allowed to let go. That's not quitting, it's choosing yourself with the wisdom God gave you. Because every moment you stay stuck in someone else's indecision is a moment you could be stepping into the life God designed for you. A life marked by peace, not pressure, by certainty, not chaos. The longer you allow delay to linger, the more it becomes your answer. And eventually, you'll realize you don't need to wait for them to decide. You've already decided that your heart deserves more than confusion, and your future deserves someone who doesn't need time to see your worth. Not the kind of honesty you offer to others, but the kind you finally offer to yourself, the raw, quiet truth you've been avoiding. The truth that says, I'm not okay. The truth that admits, I still miss them, or I wasn't as strong as I pretended to be, or I knew it wasn't right, but I held on anyway. This level of honesty isn't easy. It's uncomfortable. It strips away the layers you've used to cope: distraction, denial, perfectionism, pretending you've already moved on. But without this honesty, healing stays out of reach. You can't heal from what you won't face. You can't recover from a wound you refuse to acknowledge. So many people try to outrun their pain, thinking time alone will fix it. But time doesn't heal what you're still hiding. It doesn't heal what you continue to justify. Healing begins when you stop blaming everyone else and start asking deeper questions. Why did I stay? What was I really hoping for? What lie did I believe about myself that made me think this was love? Honesty invites God into the process. He doesn't need your performance, He needs your permission. And He works best in the areas where you're willing to be real. When you come to Him with a broken, messy, unfiltered truth, He doesn't turn away. He draws near. He doesn't shame you for the heartbreak or the confusion or the weakness. He honors the fact that you've stopped pretending and started surrendering. Healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about seeing it clearly, learning from it, and no longer allowing it to define your identity. But you can't do that if you're still sugarcoating the past. If you keep telling yourself, it wasn't that bad, or maybe it could still work out, you're delaying the freedom you were made for. You're holding on to fantasy, not facing reality. And fantasy never healed anyone, it only prolongs the pain. Being honest with yourself might lead to tears. It might lead to regret. It might lead to the painful realization that you gave your heart to someone who didn't know how to hold it. But those moments, those painfully honest moments, are sacred. They are the beginning of transformation. They are the breaking that leads to rebuilding. You were never meant to carry your heartbreak alone, but you also weren't meant to bypass it with false strength. Real strength is saying, I'm hurting, but I'm ready to heal. It's choosing truth over comfort, clarity over denial, growth over resentment. And when you do that, you create space for God to work, not just around you, but deep within you. So if you want healing, start with honesty. Not the polished version of your story, but the real one. Because that's where grace meets you, not in the version you pretend to be, but in the person you are when no one's watching. That's where healing begins. In the end, the journey to healing, clarity, and alignment isn't about avoiding the hard truths or holding on to what isn't meant for you. It's about facing the reality of your heart with courage and honesty. You need clarity about the person in your heart because your peace is too valuable to be caught in confusion. You must acknowledge that feelings aren't always truth and that love alone doesn't guarantee alignment. Sometimes delay is a choice that keeps you stuck, and healing only begins when you're brave enough to be honest with yourself about the pain you've been carrying. By embracing these truths, you free yourself to walk in the peace and purpose God has for you. Clarity, honesty, and alignment with what is truly right for you are not just lofty ideals, they are the foundation of the life you're meant to live. So take a step back, trust God's process, and remember that your worth isn't tied to someone else's indecision or inability to see you clearly. Healing begins when you choose to face the truth, no matter how hard it may be. And from there, God will guide you to the peace and wholeness you've been searching for.